Welcome to the Hard Money Show, where we talk about real estate, home loans, and media. I'm extremely excited to have our guest on today.
This is Gerael Jones, also known as your friendly neighborhood realtor, also known as Mr. Sacramento, and I work with Nick Sadek, Sotheby's International Realty here in the Sacramento region.
I love it, man. Thank you for being on today. I know you're super busy. We went back and forth the last couple days. Our week really trying to get it, and that's just kind of the world of real estate, right? It's like your schedule's always booked and always open at the same time. It's like Schrodinger's cat, man.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, no, I can
really
do that.
know.
And then you're like, no, my client needs to meet. Oh, I got something I got to do. Like, can we reschedule, right? But you've been super nice about the whole thing. So I'm hella happy to have you on, man. Thank you a lot. And so what we like to do is we just kind of want to get to know you a little bit. Tell us, how did you get into real estate? I know that's kind of your big thing right now, but a little bit of your background and how'd you get into it?
No, I appreciate it, and thank you for having me on. You and I have known each other for some time, and it's kind of always interesting how you cross paths with someone again at some point in time. But yeah, I'm excited to be here. I got into real estate probably about 5 years ago or so. And long story long, I, have gone through a roller coaster of life that led me to having a kid and not having a father really growing up. I decided to just own up and be the father. And that led me to a job where, with my work ethic, I rose to the top, met a mortgage broker, and he gave me an opportunity to learn real estate. And at that time, believe it or not, I didn't even know what a mortgage was. I was so ignorant to the whole industry that ever since I started learning, I just saw a whole new world that I was already living in right in front of my face. So I loved it. Everything about it, I loved it. And it's kind of a hand to God story because everything in my career in the beginning had been serendipity. From meeting that guy who was my first broker, getting the internship, he just started. The 3 days that he had available were the 3 days I had off. The Department of Real Estate was next door to my apartments at the time.
So you lived over there by
desk.
Expo then, yeah?
Mm-hmm,
Okay.
by the Palms, actually.
Okay, yeah,
And,
I used to love the Palms. You guys have that were super, like one of the nicest pools in Sacramento.
I think it might be the nicest pool.
Yeah.
It's really the whole lagoon shaped thing.
Yeah.
And the 20-person jacuzzi is really nice. And then beyond that, I was working restaurants at the time. I was still trying to do both, transitioning over. And the moment I closed my first deal, which was an off-market distressed multi-unit property, I double-ended with my broker and this guy who was an entitlement attorney downtown, was complete rebuild. As soon as that deal closed, my night job burned down in a kitchen fire.
Oh my gosh.
So for the next 6 months,
Jesus.
I was unemployed. And so I took that as an opportunity of a lifetime. I told my girlfriend, I said, I need your patience. I told my kid's mom, I said, hey, I need you to not get in the way. I told my mom, I need your help with my kid, and no questions asked. I spent the next 6 months doing everything I could to develop myself in the business. And except for maybe 3 shifts of working somewhere, I never went back to restaurants, never went back to an hourly job. My first year, I closed 15, then I closed 20, then I closed 36. And so I just used every single second I could to make myself more valuable to the marketplace, to my clients, for myself, and then, of course, for anyone else that was in some kind of alignment in the same direction. So I've worked myself up from this place to that place, and I've tried to make the best reputation for myself along the way.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. I mean, the average realtor does between 0, I guess, because there's a lot of realtors that don't do any deals. But the average kind of realtor does about 6 deals a year, right? So you in your first year were already kind of beating out the average realtor.
Yeah.
Which is really impressive, right? For people who are not, involved in real estate, or even, people who are brand new to real estate, they always kind of wonder, where should I be? What should those numbers look like? And I think, it's not super realistic to be like, oh yeah, you're going to go out and close 15 deals in a year. But some people do it, right? Top 1% type of people, top 10% type of people, they're out there doing it. And I think you're a testament to that.
Thank you. Again, I think it was very serendipity. A lot of things lined up. and I happen to be the person to see it as an opportunity instead of, these other people at the restaurant, they basically went on vacation. They went to go hang out. They're at the beach,
Right.
posted themselves working out more. I'm like, you're getting paid, you're still getting paid. You can do anything you want and you're
Right.
getting paychecks. So what I did is I cut a deal with my broker, and I said, I'm not making enough money to pay my bills. I'm making, 1,800 bucks off of this, kitchen burning down thing.
Mm-hmm.
What can we do? So he says, what I'll do for you is I'll give you 25% commission, but I'll give you 40 hours a week at $12 an hour.
Oh, wow.
I
That's
said, fine.
awesome.
Yeah, I said, fine, $16 an hour, 40 hours a week, and I'll make all the calls and 25%. That's fine. He goes, fine, $15 an hour. So we negotiate a little bit. And then I just, I went from 12 to 15-hour days. I did nothing but real estate. I freed up my schedule to do, I slept at the office. I, did everything I could to propagate myself toward where I wanted to be, thinking that I had 6 months to figure it out, 6 months to whether I can make this work or not. And it repaid me kindly.
So that's a really unique kind of experience, right? Because there's not very many brokerages now that will do any sort of hourly pay or anything like that. So, it sounds like your broker really kind of stepped in and saw some drive in you and made it possible for you to do that, because a large part of the conversations that we have is we talk about being ethical within our industry. And that becomes extremely difficult when you're in a financial straits, because it is really difficult for a lot of people to get the ball moving in real estate. And then you finally get to the point where you can do deals and you need money so badly. It's just like you try to do everything you can to get them to close that deal, even though it may not be the best thing for them. That happens a lot over and over and over in the industry. And so it sounds like your broker really gave you an opportunity to step in the right way and do the job correctly.
Yeah, it was a blessing. I mean, ethics are always something that I've felt from the beginning of my career, that I'd rather people work with me than other people, because my idea of salespeople in the beginning were car salesmen. I think they're predominantly the person that everyone pictures when you hear a salesperson. You walk into a car dealership and there's just like whatever they need to say, whatever they need to do to get you to attach yourself to this material thing in order to put yourself in a financial disposition. No matter what the outcome is, the car breaks down a week from now, it doesn't matter. The sale is over.
Right.
The person is paid. And so I said, if I'm going to do this, I'm not going to be that person. You kind of have to adjust yourself along the way. And then, yeah, at first, when you're in financial straits, you have what they call commission breath. They're just really trying to like get them do it. And it becomes very pressure oriented, very kind of, a negative persuasion. And so over the course of time, I've learned to communicate against that preconceived notion and be like, hey, listen, this might not be tomorrow. This might be next year, but it's going to be better to have a plan than not have a plan.
Right.
I can't talk someone into a house. I don't want to work with people who I have to convince to buy a house. You already want to buy a house. I'm trying to give you the best scenario possible for it to happen and for you not to have to compromise yourself in the process. Keeping them in a place of leverage, keeping them without a time clock, makes them not have so much buyer's remorse along the way, hopefully no buyer's remorse. And making sure that giving the opportunity to walk away any moment gives them the power that, hey, this is my choice. This is what I wanted. I can quit anytime I want. I can walk away anytime I want. This, if I don't want this, I can cancel. I don't ask questions about it, because I don't want them to buy a house and be like, I felt like I was forced, and never talk to me again. I want to be the realtor for life. And so that's always the direction I come from. And that's what I preach, and that's what I practice.
Yeah, and that's the only way to build a career in this industry, right? I think there's a lot of there's a lot of realtors in California. I want to say there's upwards of like 600,000 registered realtors in California. And when you think about it, it's pretty overwhelming, right? A lot, like you always hear this in the industry, right? Like everybody's cousin has a real estate license, right? There's always somebody to go to.
Everyone knows 10.
Yeah, exactly. But the whole nomenclature of 10% of the industry is doing 90% of the business. If you're in it long enough, you start to see that actually is the case, because so many people treat this as if it's a job, right? If they were a waiter or, whatever, working at freaking the movie theaters, but this is a career if you treat it that way. And when you start to treat it that way, I think you see those type of realtors that are speaking the way that you speak and acting the way that you're acting, and they're creating opportunity for themselves because they understand that in order to be successful in this industry, it is about repeat business. It is about leveraging the people that you work with to give you referrals and doing it in a way where you're being trustworthy and honest. And it sounds like, you either had that innately in you, or at least you had a good coach to start with.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're hitting a lot of things on the hammer. What I've learned in my course of my experience in this industry is the bar is set super low. 600,000 people do not share the same experience. They do not share the same mentorship. They do not share the same level of standards of excellence. And the reason why the 10% control the other 90% of the business is because they have higher standards. They put people first, and they've learned that money is a byproduct. Money is a byproduct of people's happiness. If you look at the way people describe this, who are veterans, this is the relationship business. This is their referral business. Good relationships lead to good referrals. And you do not get good relationships and good referrals if people feel like you slighted them.
Right.
And there's a lot of people who get a license who don't ever do a deal. Maybe they are your cousin, and because of your cousin, you feel obligated to work with them. And here's the thing is, even if I was someone's cousin, even in my best friends, I have friends that I've known my entire life, not a single problem with. And they say, well, if I buy a house, I'll definitely use you. I'm like, only use me if you think I'm the best for you.
Right.
If you have someone else who you're more confident in, maybe our relationship gets in the way. Don't use me. I give everyone the exit strategy. Say, hey, I'm not for everyone. I have my way of doing things. My way is X, Y, and Z. Here's why I do it. Here's what it means. Here's how it can help. But you still have to trust that I'm doing what's best for you. And if you have any concerns about that, then let's not dedicate the next 90 days together to working through this process because you feel obligated to do it. That's not what's best for us.
Right. Absolutely. Right. And I think that's the best way to approach it. I mean, and the other thing is, I think you come at real estate in a really realistic perspective of, this isn't necessarily a short process. There's a lot that goes into this, and there's a certain way that I have to do my job to be effective. And that might not be something that you jive with. And that's a really interesting thing. I talk about this with some of the realtors that I coach and some of the people that I work with, that the big overarching idea that I'm really starting to develop is communication, right, within our industry, and how there's different types of communication and levels of communication that happen, that if you don't do these effectively and you don't learn how to listen and hear people, you're going to have a really difficult time creating that sort of dialogue that makes you effective, right? So it sounds like you really kind of set that up correctly up front, which is a pleasure to hear, because that's not the case with everybody. It can be extremely difficult to learn how to switch that sort of dialogue and really step in and say, like, okay, I'm hearing what you're saying, I'm listening to what you're saying, and I'm going to respond. And this is the sales part of our job. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're trying to sell you to do something, but it's the sales part of the job of saying, I hear you and I understand, and now I'm going to respond in a way that you're going to understand, right?
Yeah. 100%. I would say to speak their language. You have to, part of what has made me successful is when I first started, I listened to all the complaints, every single complaint that was made, every single reservation, apprehension, disagreement, fear. I said, how can we answer those with a process? How can we make sure everyone feels comfortable with this process? If you're going to do anything in business at all at any point in time, you don't think about money first. You think of it last. What am I doing? What does it make me? Not what am I trying to, what do I want to make, and how do I get people to give me the money? What process do I need to make this much money? Well, I need to make sure that everyone feels comfortable, so they have loyalty to me. I have to make sure that they're listened to and they feel important, so they have loyalty to me, because they've already decided to buy a house. They're going to do it with somebody.
Right. Absolutely.
I want to make sure that they feel confident in my abilities. And not only that, that's just me communicating with them. Every single moment you spend in front of someone, if it's a minute or an hour, if it's just, once a week or twice a month, doesn't really matter. Everything either adds to or takes away from a relationship. People do not forget the way you make them feel. If you make them feel confident and motivated, and that you're not there for yourself, you make sure that you're there for them. Repeat things back to them that they said to you. Make sure that you're active listening. A lot of people think that active listening is, sure, okay, right. And what it really sends a message is, I don't really want to talk to you anymore, okay? And really what it's like, so what you're telling me is this. And people think of sales as like this whole like persuasive, like communicative style that you're going to get swindled. No, sales is being able to answer someone's needs and wants. So Mac, you're telling me you're looking for a house with 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, right?
Yes. That's it.
Right. Yeah. You said you want a mortgage. That's around $2,000 a month. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Wonderful. And you said you want to live in a neighborhood with a good school next to the river. Is that right?
Best school, best river you got in Sacramento. Give me the best one.
Perfect. The best one we got. I picked out a few options for you. They're right here. Here are some photos. Here's some files. Here's some reports. Is this along the lines of what you're looking for?
Yeah.
Great. When would you like to go on a tour?
Let's go Thursday.
Boom. And now we're off to a good start.
Yeah, I like it. And so, there's a lot of things. So my background, my expertise, sales by trade. I've done sales, started doing sales when I was 15. My education, my master's in communication and background in marketing, PR, development, things like that. And so when I talk with a lot of realtors and they ask, for help, especially you see this in kind of two spheres, like kind of our generation, we were lucky enough to at least kind of grow up in the Facebook and maybe MySpace if you're old enough, going into Instagram, really kind of the second wave of social media development, right? And so we kind of have a stronger grasp of that. But now you have the younger ones who think they know how to master it, but they don't. So you have to teach them. And the older ones who don't know at all kind of what's going on. And then it's just basic, like, how do we do this? And you and I were talking about this, and this is kind of the reason we got reconnected was, I've done a lot of helping on this front as it pertains to media development, especially in real estate. And, there's very few people that I see creating strong brands for themselves within the industry. And that's what I saw. I saw you creating a strong brand, Mr. Sacramento, doing your, I want to say weekly reports, but sometimes it feels like you're even putting more than one out a week. Are you? Yeah, it seems like they come out pretty frequently, right? And so I was looking and I was like, man, like I wish one person that I talked to would do just this, like the same exact thing that I'm telling them, right? Because you're out here, you're being active and things like that. And so I kind of want to jump in a little bit on, the podcast is really designed on two fronts. One is how can we help realtors be better within our industry? And the second is how can we help our consumers? So I want to talk a little bit on that side of the realtor. What made you really start to get active on that branding side, and what can you kind of offer to people that shows you've had success on this?
I think in short, I listen to what I'm told to do by people who are better than me, and I go do it.
Okay.
I was a big proponent of Tom Ferry, Bill Pipes, Chris Voss. Jeb Blunt has some good books. I'm well read. You got to keep, I've closed almost as many books as I've read over the course of my career. I don't think that is by happenstance. Mm-hmm. I think that is completely reflective of each other. You got to have things to talk about. You got to have new ideas to evolve. When I first started doing videos, I did 50 takes. I was like, oh no, that's ugly. I don't like the way I look. Sure. And you have to realize you're your own biggest critic the whole time. You are also your worst enemy. If you allow yourself to not be able to put yourself out there and be like, yeah, it's not the best, but it's better than nothing. I always tell my team, no is better than nothing, because at least you tried. At least you got something out there. And then you watch how people respond to it. At first, it doesn't even matter, because here's the thing, because even if you're insecure about putting something out there to your friends and to your family, they're not doing that. They're not. So you're still one step above them. So what do you care if someone says something negative about you? The reason why you care is because that negativity, you could harness that and say, okay, they didn't like how fast I talked. So now I'll talk a little slower.
Right.
They don't like, my, the background in my video. So now I'll have something a little more decorative. These little things, it's the market talking to you. Maybe it's your friends, maybe it's your family, maybe it's your haters. It's still the market and it's still speaking to you. Jeff Bezos says there are 3 things for Amazon he spent the most energy into. He said you can never spend too much energy into 3 things. People want variety, they want competitive prices, and they want it as soon as possible. The goal is to figure out for each individual thing you do, what is the trifecta of things you can never spend too much energy into? You can never spend too much energy into being able to communicate effectively with someone. You can never spend too much energy into becoming more valuable for someone, having a more valuable process for someone. You can never spend too much energy into making them feel important to you. These things are transferable between any industry because all industries have the same basic business model, the same. We are producers for consumers. So what really matters is that we produce things for consumers based upon what the consumers are asking for. And what they're asking for are the answers to their complaints. So whatever complaints they have, whatever negativity that they're sharing, they're not sharing that to be negative. They're sharing it to find someone who can deliver something positive. And if you have that mentality, you'll be able to get ahead of a lot of things. Other things over the course of time, you'll learn the ins and outs through trial and error. Like when I submitted offers before is not the way I submit offers now. It's very comprehensive. It's very elaborate. And oftentimes through COVID, where I was up against 50 offers a house, where I did 50% more business than the year before, I did 36 transactions. Some of those offers, I think 5 or 6 offers in a row, I wasn't even the highest offer. I just had a better presentation. Going back to, having a relationship with someone, every encounter, you will build or take away someone's confidence, someone's loyalty, someone's trust, right? That also applies to other people that are involved in the power making decision. So when I presented the offer as listing agent, the first call listing agent, I made them the client. Everyone's the client. So the second time I talked to them, the offer reflected our first conversation. So by that, they felt I was listening. They didn't have to track the lender down. The lender was on the phone. They didn't have to read the offer. I itemized what it said. Everyone was there at the same time to agree on the same thing. So it all made sense at once. And that presentation, that ability to communicate at that level spoke volumes that equated to monetary value over the process. Because again, we weren't the highest offer. We didn't always have the best terms, but we got our offer accepted anyway because they had more trust, they had more confidence in our ability to work with them to a happy closing. And that's why I did so much business in the year of 2021.
So I do want to break this into 2 parts, right? Because we diverged a little bit from the media side. And I love what you're saying about on the transactional side, right? So on the media side, right, what I'm hearing is get started, right? Start putting things out. Don't worry about what other people say. Just do what you can, create a brand around yourself, and try to be professional and knowledgeable about what you're doing, right? I think a lot of times people spend a lot of time trying to build their business without learning their business. And that becomes really difficult to put content out because you feel fake. You don't feel like you don't know what you're talking about in the industry. And that might be partially true, right? If you're 3 months into being a realtor, you probably don't know a whole lot, but there's no stopping you from reading. There's no stopping from learning and picking up a little tidbit that you can share. So it sounds like that was kind of your big thing. And I can see that now in the work that you're doing, right? And you and I were just having a conversation about diversitizing your money to start creating ad sets, right? And that's really the big thing. I think that's the next step after creating a brand that's recognizable and this is a hard thing for a lot of people, because unless you've done Google ads or Facebook ads, Instagram ads, and things like that, and done them at a high level where you understand how do you diversitize your ad sets to use them for analytic reasons, it can be really difficult. So that's what you and I were talking about. We were talking about how take $500 of your photography, because you're saying you're thinking about starting to film your own stuff, which I always think is the best way to go. And I was lucky to enter our industry that way with that background, right? So I never relied on anybody else. But the other part of take $500, put that money into ad sets and you customize each one of those ad sets. And now let's say you're putting $10 into 50 different videos. And all you have to do is change the headline that you're putting on there, change the different demographics that you're trying to reach, the different groups you're trying to reach. And now you can start working at that high level of understanding those analytics. And luckily, Facebook breaks them down so well for you that you can start better pinpointing where that money's going and how you're using it. And to me, that seems like the next logical step. And that seems where you're going, right? Because you're doing, anywhere from 20 to 30, 40 loan or deals a year. We want to get you up to whatever, 50, 100, whatever your team can manage. And it sounds like you're starting to make that next jump, right?
Absolutely. And I like the way you're putting it, because once you have a template structure where all you have to do is kind of update some information instead of having to build it from scratch. The building it from scratch part's a difficult part because it's kind of time consuming, and you don't want to just do things because of what you think. You want to look at the data trends. You want to follow what's working and then make a version that sends out your message and your branding. So it's like what works, throw your name and your brand on top of it, and then fill in the ad lib. And then over the course of time, update. When you look at my weekly real estate market update videos, all I do is I change the description, I change the date, the template's the same, the format's the same. Sometimes they wear different clothes to make it look like a new video. That first takes time, it's timely, but now I can just, I can send it out.
You can get it out nice and quick, right? And in a lot of instances for your ad sets, you don't have to change the video at all. All you have to do is take 4 key messages from that video, change your headlines, and change the demographics that you're getting that out to. And now you've turned one video into 4 videos that give you 4 different pictures of who you're marketing to and who's being receptive to that market, right? And I think that's the nice thing is that you've already built such a nice kind of toolbox there that you have all of this stuff in there. You can start to reuse it and use that way. And I think for a lot of brand new people, especially if you're not comfortable door knocking or networking or face to face, and you're kind of grown up around social media, this is the way to get started in it.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely a few parts to it. One, it's taking your time to develop something that's easy to manage. I wish that I would have done that more up front. I wish I had a more clear vision and structure to how I wanted it to progress. But I'm glad that I didn't spend too much time on it, because 100% planning is 100% nothing happening. You got to execute. So sometimes it's best to just take your lashings and say, I'm just going to do it and then I'll fix it. And then I'll do it and then I'll fix it. And then that's evolution.
Right.
And then after you maybe have a better understanding of the ins and outs, then you have a better understanding of how to build it. A little bit of trial and error, but against your personal opinion of yourself. Like, take yourself out of it for a second. Look at it objectively. You're just another person in the world who is interested in the industry that a lot of people are interested in. You're not going to be the person that everyone is going to be on the stage for the world to say, ha ha ha, look at this guy. Just everyone has to start somewhere. It's okay to not be perfect in the beginning. It's okay to feel like an imposter. The imposter syndrome is very real. I went through it after my first year. I closed all those deals. I didn't feel like it was me. I went through this slump of like, I don't even know who I am anymore. It's weird. It's like going through the abyss.
Right.
And that's when I went back through those 3 shifts I mentioned earlier. And I was around those people I used to be around. I'm like, I'm not supposed to be here anymore. I am this person. And so it does take a sense of self-development, really growing inside yourself to accept people do want to work with you. They do like you. You are doing well. They do like what you're saying. They do like how you're saying it. They like the energy you're giving off.
Right.
And then to come back and now you understand that it's okay to have feelings, but it's okay. It's also okay to not let those feelings have you. Process those feelings and produce something that is meaningful, that you feel proud of, but also don't circle yourself out before you get into it. It's not, don't put yourself on a stage that you're not really supposed to be on. You're supposed to be on that stage over there. People, don't, someone said to me once, don't crash the plane before you get on it.
Yep. Well, the interesting thing, that you said a little bit earlier, so the imposter syndrome, right? I want to kind of circle into this. You were saying when you first got into real estate, like you didn't know anything about it, right? And I think a lot of times we kind of forget that we went through, you know, like over 100 hours of training to get licensed in the
Mm-hmm.
first part, and that knowledge base on its own is already miles ahead what general public knows, right? It's just there's such a huge gap in the knowledge of wealth just in general. It's kind of the way, because I always think that the longer you're in real estate, the more that you start to branch into overall finance, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
it's just everything's so intermingled in the real estate and mortgage market that it tends to happen to do that. And because I've done real estate and I also do home loans, I've had the opportunity to kind of see that full circle and really kind of dive into people's finances, and be able to help coach them and things like that. It's just so many people really don't know how to take the first step and things like that. And so we think as brand new realtors that we don't know what we're doing because maybe you don't know how to write up a contract or you don't actually know how to do the day-to-day job. But in reality, the bare backbone of it, you do know, right? And you can start to read up and learn really quick and have content to present. So I think that's great. And I want to jump over to kind of your transactional side, the way that you kind of laid out how you're winning deals over other people, right? Because I think that's really similar to how our brokerage works. We're more of the way that I have it set up with my team, and I mostly LO deals now. I don't really do real estate, because I help my realtors out, is I do a follow-up call, right? So the conversation is like, we're going back and forth. What are you guys going to do on the deal? All right, perfect. Let's get this all laid out. Make sure you're including everybody. We send it over. As soon as it's sent over, I call over and I say, hey, I just wanted to let you know, I talked to, my realtor and our clients. They just let me know that they sent over an offer. I did want to let you know. And then we get into some of the details or whatever. If there's anything you need, I just wanted to let you know that I'm available anytime that you need to speak, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
think both strategies are very similar, in the way that we're creating an atmosphere that says we're more prepared than the other realtors and we're serious about closing. And we're going to do this in a manner that is going to make your life easier, because ultimately when you do these real estate deals, and you can tell me if you feel the same way, there's realtors that you work with and it feels like, wow, I can't believe I just got paid to do this job. And there's other realtors you work with and you're like, this is the most difficult thing I've ever done in my whole life. I don't understand why, because it's not that hard, but it totally
Yeah.
was, right? And so to me, you would be the type of realtor I'd be like, thank God, man, let's like get this done and get a drink when we're done. Like, good job.
Yeah, and that's sometimes honestly often the case. I'm not here to make a quick paycheck. I'm here to make relationships with everybody. Everyone's a client, and it's important to separate yourself from everyone else because too many people are here for the wrong reasons, and it's easy to identify them. They are quick to make an offer. They're not quick to have a setup. They're not like I get offers sent to me literally verbatim. Here's the offer, PDF, nothing else. The offer is not even filled out correctly. The bar is set super low, and so, in addition to what you do, my process is this. I don't send the offer until me, the lender, and the listing agent are on the phone. And I give this stuff out like my secret sauce because what's good for me is good for the industry. And 80% or more of people that work with agents are let down that much of the time because again 10 to 20% control the entire industry, because the standards are set so low. There's that same number of turnover ratio. So I want people to have a better understanding of the real estate industry and how to serve clients better, because the client that you don't call that I call next that works with me is upset with you, and now I look like I'm you. I want us all, a raising tide raises all ships. So I don't submit the offer until one, hopefully it's already pre-underwritten, period. Two, me, the lender listing agent's on the phone. Three, then I send it. It's filled out. all the way down with a listing agent's email number and address of their brokerage. Everything is re-identified in an automized format inside of the offer. And then I'm there, lender, listing agent, and realtor to review it together. I also attach things like a pre-approval letter, proof of funds, my past sales history to blatantly and obviously identify you're working with someone who cares a lot about the experience that we're going to share together. Your client, the listing agent's client, the seller becomes my client, or vice versa. The buyer becomes my client. I don't represent them, but I'm a part of their experience. I answer my phone that way. I negotiate through the request for repairs that way. No matter what side I'm on, we're one team, and we have a duty to our industry to not do anyone a disservice. So everyone leaves thinking better about us and our professional roles as fiduciary agents to kind of correct the thinking that we're not salespeople, we're service people, we're consultants and advisors that are here to make a change in people's lives. Do we make money? Yes, we make money. Everyone makes money in a job that they work. The difference between us and people who just have a license is how much time and effort we put into it and how much we care about the experience. Selfishly, I want that person to tell everyone about me at the end. But the only way that I feel that I'm going to be able to do that is to make that person feel so good throughout the process, heard, understood, and feel important that they want to. That's the recipe.
Yeah, well, it's interesting too because you know your secret sauce, right? I don't know if you've experienced this, but I definitely have, is that you can give out the exact way to be successful and people still won't do it. I mean, that's the reality, right? Because you can't, there's some sort of innate drive, I think, in people to want to be successful, as well as some sorts of sense of competitiveness, as well as drive, right? And I've never personally worked with anybody that's outworked me. That's just the reality of it, right? Now, I have friends who work just as hard as me, and I have one friend in particular who I would say works harder than me, actually, but we're not in the same industry, right? And maybe if we were in the same industry, then it would be a fun competition, right? But it's very seldom that I'll say, hey, this is exactly what I do to be successful, and this is it. And most people, they just won't do it because listen to what you're saying, right? I mean, what you do is above and beyond, right? Most people are just too lazy to do that. The standard people are just going to send it over. Thank you. Please let me know, right? That's going to be what's in that email. And so as much as you do share and same, I feel the same way. I hope the industry will get better. I hope that people will do a better job. But in actuality, right, we try to help who we can in the sphere that we have. And I'm not threatened by anybody. I'll tell you exactly what we do. And that's one of the reasons that I wanted to get a podcast going in our industry. One of the reasons I want people to share what's going on, because if somebody does do what you do, that's going to be one person, right? One person out of a couple thousand, so it's going to be a very, very, very small percentage. And ultimately they're taking from you. So you're still ahead of them. So, there's, I think, for those of you who are new, listen to what he's saying. If you want to compete with somebody like this is a shark, man. This is not somebody that you want to take lightly. This is not somebody, right? This is like the guy, he's trying to get the deal and he's doing everything right for the best result for his clients. If you're trying to compete with them, start by doing at least what he's doing. And then maybe there's something else that you can do that he hasn't thought of yet, right? I don't know. But that's, I think, where we need to set that precedence for realtors in the industry is things like that you're doing is what makes the most sense. Let's talk a little bit on the consumer side. I don't know, how involved are you on the mortgage side? You're not licensed, right?
No, I'm not licensed. I was, part of my success in my career comes from working in a brokerage that was part appraisal office, part mortgage office, part real estate brokerage that also had private financing.
Sure.
So, also starting in the part of the industry I started in with off-market opportunities, that has a lot to do with private financing. That has a lot to do with investors. Calling the shark reference, I mean, that really applies to the shark that protects the fish, really, because there's a lot of other sharks in here with sharper teeth than me. I'm more of a whale shark. So to speak.
Fair enough.
All that to say is I have been cross-trained a lot. there are often times that I work with my lending partners and I help them find solutions that they're not thinking of. Because a lot of people sometimes they get in this automated habit of just what's usual, what is, what's easiest, the path of least resistance. I'm like, well, how about this? How about we take some of those seller credit from the seller for these things to buy down the rate to make that mortgage more affordable, to increase our ratio so we're able to come up and use those for the closing costs or something along those lines. Obviously, you and I know that was kind of circular,
Right.
but there are other things. If we added this person, we took that person off, would it change this, would it change that? Kind of troubleshooting a lot. I have taken my lenders courses. I do have my NMLS license number. I'm not a licensed mortgage officer of any kind, but I do think it's, in my opinion, a good buyer's agent knows loans, a good listing agent knows appraisals, a great agent knows both.
Yeah.
And you got to keep yourself informed on every single part of our industry you can, because what ultimately happens is you find more solutions and more opportunities, especially when others cannot. Turn down business is a great lead avenue, but like you said earlier, it requires you to do extra work and pay extra attention and do extra homework and extra education for you to become that person of value.
Right. And that's I think in a similar way that you were lucky to step into a brokerage like that, so was I, right? We have both lending and real estate on our side, and I learned extremely quickly that, and granted, this is a skill set that I developed before I got into real estate, when I got into public relations, and I started to look at the industry as a whole, and I started to realize, well, public relations is only one part of it, right? There's public relations, there's marketing, there's advertisement, and there's sales. And if I don't know all of those, how can I truly be an asset? And when I got into real estate, I learned the same thing. I was like doing this, and I kept thinking, man, I'm having a really tough time understanding what's going on, because I feel like I'm in the dark about the loan side, right? I don't know what's going on over there. I feel like a lot of times I'm just like, oh, well, let me call over there. And so I made that decision to get licensed, and luckily I'm in a position at my brokerage where I'm a VP, so I carry both licenses through our two brokerages in order to coach and be available for service for our brokerages. But that's not something that a lot of realtors get to do, right? But I still urge every single realtor, the same way that you did, is get knowledgeable about what's going on that side, because you're doing yourself a disservice and you're doing your client a huge disservice by not understanding those sides of the industry, right? And the appraisal side's really interesting as well. My broker used to be licensed as an appraiser, so I've learned it, but we don't do it. But being able to understand all of that is so critical. And these are things that, if you're brand new, you can start to teach yourself and start to learn and continue your education on, which I think is extremely valuable. So that's good, dude. You're well-rounded. You know what's going on. Obviously, you're well-spoken. Look at you. You're dressing super, super good, right? I'm really lucky. This is one of the things I love about real estate, because before I got into real estate, I was working for the Boy Scouts of America as a senior district executive, and I loved it. I was in nonprofit for many, many years, raising money for foster care and mostly youth programs. And I loved working for the Boy Scouts, except we often worked 100-hour weeks and nonprofit pay, which means that you get paid pretty much nothing for the amount of work that you're doing, right? But I really loved what I was doing, but it was taxing. And so that's where I kind of looked at where that industry was going and what I wanted to do. And I got into real estate because I thought this is still a place that I can help people. And I can still be of service, but I can be able to feed myself ultimately, right? Yeah. And so I think that's really important to have that and realize that as a realtor. But as it pertains to the consumer side, right? I mean, what are you seeing out there? Yeah, I know that I don't know how far out you go. I kind of service all the way out to Merced. And then like into the Bay, but primarily we're in Sacramento. I know you're primarily in Sacramento, so I don't know how far out the spear, but what are you seeing for consumers out here?
So I tell people this: if you go to downtown Sacramento, any in any direction. You can drive an hour and a half. That's what I service. I will go about an hour and a half. That makes sense for me. And that applies to any price point. Obviously, the further out I go, the more money I would like to make.
Yeah. And you
But
will
also,
most what directions you go.
right.
Just don't go an hour and a half into the foothills. That's gonna be a troublesome spot for you.
It's funny you say that. I did a lot of that in 2020
Yeah.
because I was working with people who are buying a lot of land to do, cannabis operations. So I had to learn the rules and regulations for that out there. I knew it front and back by the end of it, and had a lot of fun. I like to drive. I played the Audible book along the way. But each region has its own pros and cons. You go down to places like Stockton, Modesto, and Manteca, they have a higher, Punjabi residency. You go to the foothills, you have a higher, Caucasian residency. You go to Roseville, you have a whole mix of people. So different cultures buy in different areas for different reasons at different times, and they buy in different ways. So it's also helpful to understand how you're working with their culture. Also, on a grander scale, you can talk about the region, and the Sacramento region has gained about 10,000 people per year since 2017. This is evident in the expansion of the freeways. This is evident to go downtown. You guys you don't even like driving through downtown anymore because of all the construction.
That's tough.
Hundreds of millions of dollars are being poured into it. Watch what happens over the course of the next 5 to 7 years in development and gentrification to the Sacramento region to make room for more appealing sites for people to want to move to this region. There was a big redistribution of wealth in 2020 and 2021, the COVID era. There's also a big redistribution of population. What's happened is people have moved out of the mega metropolis areas and they're trying to find something more suburbia. I've always said Sacramento is a great place to live and to go visit and come back to, because it's quiet, not a lot of excitement, not a lot of traffic. But now, ever since this COVID thing happened, people work from home. They said, well, I want a big backyard. Part of the reason why I like what's happening in Sacramento is because there's so much cash equitable value in houses, but also it's a supply and demand factor. We're seeing so much development and opportunity right now, from Roseville to Rancho Marietta to Elk Grove to West Sacramento even. They're moving zoos, they're building bridges, because they're seeing the value in being in this town that we've seen the whole time since we've been here. And I think that it just speaks volumes to the sustainability of our local region. Now, if you go to California, the state, I have met someone recently from Vermont who said, I thought there was a mass exodus of people from California. I said, yeah, that's mainly like the top percent, the bigger corporations, because they're getting taxed the most.
Right.
The rest of us are still here. We still have a population of about 30 million people in California. They just moved from mega metropolis to something a little bit smaller, something a little bit more quiet. But now that's also creating a higher demand for supply. That's what's going to be sustainable for our region. Then you have the Federal Reserve. They're trying to kind of regulate the speed of the market, but that's over the whole nation. That still is hard to control on a local level. And when you have so many people moving here for other reasons, they're still going to buy. They still have good paying jobs, so working remotely, and they're from Silicon Valley, the Bay Area. They have all this money. They sold their house. They are able to buy multiple houses here, which is still stimulating the rental market.
Yeah, I wonder. Do you wonder though that the perception of California is that, because you brought up Silicon Valley, you brought up, the Bay Area and things like that. And I worry that a lot of people think California is just too unaffordable to live in. And granted, it is expensive compared to a lot of other states, but there's still, and especially because you have this knowledge base of the Central Valley, there's still affordable places in this state to live. Places where you can get homes for $300,000, $200,000. Now, there's always going to be an argument of what communities you want to live in, what the crime rates are going to look like, what the schools are going to look like there. But the fact is that, there are places like that. So I worry that a lot of people think that living in California is just unattainable. I don't think it is. I just think that you have to tailor your expectations and understand that there's always been super rich. There's always been super poor. I don't see a utopia happening anytime soon. And so, there's a place somewhere around here that we're going to be able to help you find that hopefully you'll be happy with.
I honestly agree. And I think if I look at the markets, every market in the entire market, whole, arena as a giant moving ocean. Okay. Goes up, it goes down. Here, interest rates, pricing, affordability index, buyer, seller, supply and demand. And what happens when you have a rising tide, it does raise all ships. So these places that people have been known for higher crime rates, well, now they have higher prices in this neighborhood. So they're not $150,000 or $200,000. It's $300,000 to $350,000. But what's happening is because the neighborhoods have more value, people are moving there that have higher value as well. And so what we're going to see over a course of time is that these neighborhoods that once were unattractive are becoming more attractive and having more attractive people living there. And I'm not talking physically. I mean their quality of life that they're sharing with others. Less crime rates, better paying jobs, nicer cars, greener neighborhoods, greener lawns, and they're giving back to the community in ways. Meadowview in the Florin area, aka South Sacramento, even places like Oak Park, they're seeing huge improvements. And yeah, is it still unattractive at some point in time? Sure it is. But like you said, you got to start somewhere, and you got to understand that if you never start, you never get anywhere, right? So you might think that, in your original plan, maybe the 1950s, American dream type mentality, that first house, I want a 2-car garage, I want 2 stories, I want a 4-bed, 3-bath house, and I want it for $200,000. Well, you know what? That might no longer be the thinking for this local area. Maybe go to Minnesota, go to Illinois, where there's a lot less density, and for residents that might still be true there, but locally, for where we are relative to what's going on in our marketplace, maybe the first thing you do is you buy the condo. You buy the condo in a good neighborhood. Maybe you buy the 2-bedroom, 1-bath, and you put up with it for a little bit. The difference is that you are able to build equity, and after a course of time, you can shift that equity. And unfortunately, maybe that's where you have to start. But fortunately, you're able to start somewhere. Just get your foot in the door, so to speak, and go up the real estate staircase until you're in that dream house that you wanted. And the best part about it is if you have the right plan, the right strategy, you can actually keep your mortgage relatively the same. Because when you shift equity, you keep the loan to value down.
Right. And don't forget the most important thing, the right team, right? I talk about this all the time. A lot of our realtors and a lot of realtors in general, they work in kind of like 6-month to 12-month spans because they're building their clientele. They just met them. People are not, it's very rare that you have somebody that's like ready to buy today, right? I work as an LO on a 12 to 24, even sometimes 36-month span because most of the time people's credit is not great, or they don't have the money saved, or they need a roadmap, right? So putting the right team behind you is extremely important. People that are going to be there, understanding your situation, and put you in a position to be successful. And like you said, it might not be what you want at this moment, but let us help you get to a place you want to get. So we got a couple minutes left. I kind of wanted to talk to you about 2 other things. A little bit of a curveball. I don't know if you've been following them or not, but have you been following the housing bubble that's about to pop in China?
Yes, I have been. I try to touch on any relative information I can, especially with how many, Chinese, Americans or Chinese people come over here to buy real estate. They actually have laws and regulations about it in real estate to make sure that it is all legitimate. But I understand that they have created a bubble for themselves, a pretty significant one.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. We were talking about this. I was talking to my wife about this 6 months ago, and she's like, "Oh, well, I'm not hearing it anywhere. So are you sure?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm sure. I know what's going on. My broker and I were talking about it." And essentially what's happened is they've created somewhat of a pyramid scheme as it pertains to the way that they in China you have to pay for your housing up front. Then they build the house for you, right? Kind of like new construction here. But that's how most of it is there. And they were using money to leverage the previous house to build new houses and leverage more houses. And with the slowing of the market, they're starting to see a bubble. Now the Chinese government is trying to, combat that the same way I think our government is with, the feds dealing with the interest rates. But ultimately, things like this, large economies having trouble in one sector affect sectors like ours. Do you think that we're going to see anything substantial, come our way, that's going to, either help or make it a little more difficult for our buyers and sellers?
Well, it's hard to say because it's all I've been reading a lot about that Tony Robbins book about the financial markets and stock markets and things like that. And I've always said that the house is a share of the stock of the real estate stock market. A homeowner is a shareholder, a decision maker that appreciates and depreciates, equitable growth and depreciation, all that good stuff. What I think what is being recognized, and we see this right now. The Sacramento City bought 102 acres over here in the South Sacramento area to build affordable housing for the development projects that I'm working on. I run into a lot of people who want to build affordable housing, townhomes, condos, things that people can roll into. I think all it takes is someone to really just build maybe like 5,000, 10,000 homes, 2 bedroom, 1 bath, or 2 bedroom, 2 baths, 800 to 1,000 square feet. So let someone get in at a low level and a nice new house. Don't charge them up the way all so they can get in and make a difference. Because I think good consumers lead to a good economy. If you charge people too much, you just make them want to leave. They don't want to leave. They like where they are. They built a family, a foundation, and things. So I think that if there is going to be a dent on the real estate market, this time it's going to come from outside influences. It's going to come from a higher cost of living. It's going to come from a higher cost for distribution, for grocery costs. All that stuff is really based upon the access to oil and to making sure we have the lubricant we need, no pun intended, in order to give people a lower cost of living. A lower cost of living puts the affordability index in a better place, meaning that they can roll back into having a good thing. But what the Federal Reserve is doing with their 6% interest rate is they're basically just trying to regulate the speed at which consumers are able to operate. So once they come down back to the 4.5% interest rates, everyone wins. Not everyone can still buy the house that they want, but appreciation has slowed down. We're still having people get back into the housing. We're still building up their equity. We just need to give it time in order for it to compensate for what just happened the last couple of years. And the real estate market, you and I both know, it's not as quick as many other markets. It does take time for everything to respond, to readjust, to resonate back. So really, a lot of people right now in the industry are having a hard time winning because the interest rates are just putting everyone out of the market. They're getting bought, they're getting priced out. So we do need to have some softening on interest rates, but we also could do well with having a lot more affordable housing units built, other than these $600,000 to $800,000 homes that are nice and new and they're all decked out with modernized features. We need something for the people at the lower end to be able to buy into the market and start building up their equity.
Yeah, that's perfect. So that actually leads me into the last question I have for you. If you've been following the program that's happening with Bank of America for the low income purchases in low income communities, I think that there's a misconception about this. Well, there's a couple misconceptions. The first one is this is not revolutionary. This is a thing there's different programs put on like this. Cal Hefa puts on one in California. It's not revolutionary. What is difficult about them is that they tend to limit you on your purchasing power, right? I know the one that Bank of America is doing, I did the math. I want to say the most house you can buy with it, with the no down payment that they're offering, is about 380,000, and they're offering them in other parts of the states. That's really good. But one of the places they're offering them in California is in LA. I don't know how far 380,000 is going to get you in LA. Let's be honest about that. But the idea in general just is basically, a bank offering a program with no down payment assistance. Now they are offering these in what they consider traditionally Hispanic and African American communities. The big misconception is that it's only for African American and Hispanic, and per a bunch of laws that were passed on not discriminating, they're not allowed to do that. So they are open to anybody, but they are set for specific communities. Do you think a program like that in Sacramento would be beneficial? Do you have any opinion on Bank of America doing this?
Well, what I first want to say is a lot of people, when I first started in the industry myself, I thought if you want a home loan, go to a bank. what I've learned over the course of time is that the banks are probably one of the most difficult places to go to. Like you mentioned, they have higher restrictions, requirements, rules, guidelines. And unlike working with someone like yourself who can go between banks, shop around, that bank thing is more like communism almost, because you're forced to work with them under their rules and requirements, and you don't really get a lot of options other than just going back to being a renter, versus something a little bit more capitalist. I mean, I'm using these terms loosely,
Sure.
because what happens is you have the power, you have the person that wants to buy the loan, so you're putting all these other lenders in a lower place of power, so they have to be more agreeable to what's best for the consumer. So that's where I would start with that. Two, do I believe that a down payment assistance program is beneficial for people? Yes, if used the right way. It should not be something that you should use for the remainder of your life. Use it to a certain point, then have a strategy, have the right team, talk to either one of us to be able to say, hey, refinance at this point in time, pay off that second loan, go, here's a new mortgage. It might be roughly the same. Maybe it's a little lower, maybe it's a little higher, but you no longer have to have this program like there. Wait again. Now you have more equity. Now that you don't have a second loan, now you can transfer equity over. It's just a way to get you started. I do believe something like that being presented into a metropolis area where obviously 380,000 is like not going to give you a room to rent. The big banks use a lot of bait and switch tactics because, like you said, a lot of people feel this is for the African American community or Hispanic American community, because those are the key demographics that sometimes have the hardest socioeconomic growth patterns, given the data and the trends that represents. So even though it's applicable to everyone, them trying to do that is only to try to incentivize those people to try to take advantage of it, who, if you look at the trends on people who are in the lower socioeconomic classes, you see what kind of financial intelligence they have. If they're not getting the right information on how to use those programs to their advantage, it could do them a disservice at the end of the day. So you really want to be able to tell them, not only, this might help you get in, but here's the cost. Here's what that's a fixed rate. You're not going to be able to. The fixed rate is a higher rate. That means that no matter what the other interest rates are for FHA and conventional financing, no matter what, Cal Hafid is 5%, no matter what. So how much is 5%? How much is that more a month versus you taking the time, saving up a down payment, putting in a little bit of extra elbow grease, stop getting Starbucks every day, little compounding things that you could do to have a quicker a method of gaining more money for a down payment. Now, instead of a 5%, you're at 3.5% again. The market shifted. You're at 3.5% again. Now you're saving, $300 on your monthly mortgage payment. Now you can get $300 more a month in a house. That puts you in a huge different bracket threshold for what kind of quality of life you're going to have. And along the way, you gain a lot more financial intelligence. So I think, long version of your question, that would be the overall perspective you should have in dealing with special programs. It's like, commercials on TV, why do they feel the need to have to commercialize those fast food? Fast food's not good for you. Be wary. Will it fill you up? Sure, but to what cost?
Absolutely. Well, that's a great take on it. Definitely understand what you're getting into. Work with people you can trust who are doing it because they value it. They value you. And before we go, I do want to make sure I give you the opportunity to put your social media out there so anybody that's interested can follow you.
Thank you. Well, Gerael Jones is one of the most unique names you'll ever find on the internet. I'm literally the only Gerael Jones with that spelling. Wow. If you Google me, and it's very, very unique. I mean, probably the most unique name I've ever come across. Gerael Jones, you look me up, you'll find my YouTube channel. On my YouTube channel, I'm Mr. Sacramento. On my Facebook, I'm your friendly neighborhood realtor. And of course, I'm on Nick Sadek, Sotheby's International Realty. It's a luxury end brokerage, but luxury to us is on a price point. It's a standard of service.
Well said. That was beautiful. All right, guys. Well, thank you for being on, listening to the Hard Money Show, where we talk about home loans, real estate, and media. Thank you, guys. Have a great day. And as always, that was fun. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you, Mac. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.